Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle leading the way today. Today, I got a great episode for you. If you're an MSP listening to this, you're always probably thinking about the exit, right? It's always in the back of your mind. Even if you just got started, I'll tell you, you should be thinking about the exit. And the problem is, a lot of us just don't know what needs to be done to get to a successful exit. And quite frankly, what a successful exit might look like. So I brought on a guest today, or I've got a guest joining us today that I think will really help clear up a little bit of that picture and give you a little bit of guidance to better understand some of the steps that you can take today to bring you back better rewards tomorrow. So I'd like to welcome to the stage now from Canyon Point, Josh Kotler. Hey, Josh, how you
Hey,
doing
Brian.
today?
I'm good, Brian. Happy to
Good.
be here.
So, Josh, the world of M&A is one of the most fascinating topics, and definitely one of the ones we get the best feedback on. Because let's face it, every MSP that's out there, while they're there to serve their constituents, and really, do a good job for their clients, the reality is they're doing this too for their families, and they are thinking about an exit someday. Problem is, most of them we're all accident. A lot of us are accidental entrepreneurs in this industry. Tech founders found their way in
Sure.
because life just led them there, and a few clients showed up, and all of a sudden it was like I had a business or whatever the roadmap might have been that brought you into this industry. And as a result, there was no professional training or really thought about the exit that went into it. But now they're in it to win it, and it's time to start thinking about it. So, before we get into really that conversation, maybe share with people a little bit about your background, who you are, how you've been in the industry, so they can
Sure.
understand why they should listen.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they should listen, but let's see how the conversation goes. So yeah, I got into this business, like you said, accidentally. I graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in philosophy. Um, I was commissioned as a Army officer, infantry officer, anticipating a bit of a career in the military. Got hurt. And next thing I know, I was sort of looking for a job, right? Like every other college grad, or So I ended up um, uh, lining up a few interviews. Um, did really well in the first interview that happened to be with a IT services company and a software development company that served law firms. They made me an offer on the spot, and I took it. And the next thing I know, I was in the IT business. From there, uh, did a couple of tours with different companies, and eventually started my own business when 25, 26 years old, decided I knew everything and could do it on my own. So started that, built an MSP really from 1998 until 2019, $7 million MSP, 20% EBITDA margins quarter after quarter. Um, what Paul Dipple would call best in class. And we were growing, but in 2019, some suitors came calling, started getting offers. I ran a little bit of a process with other buyers that I thought would be interested. And by the end of the year, December 23rd, 2019, my transaction closed. It's an awesome exit. I became part of Compass MSP. Probably wasn't going to stick around long because, as an entrepreneur, I was probably not going to fit into a more corporate culture. But then this thing called COVID happened, and a few things came together at the right time. Um, I was supposed to run the Florida business for Compass, ended up very quickly becoming the COO and then the CEO of that business. Um, and I was introduced to M&A. Obviously, I sold my business, so that was my first introduction as a seller. But I got interested, or rather introduced, on to the buy side, and I started to understand the math behind enterprise value creation, multiple arbitrage, synergies, things like that. And that really caught my interest. And so for the next 2 years, uh, I did M&A for Compass. We got 4 deals done that tripled the size of Compass. And it was very exciting. When Compass paused to sort of digest all these transactions, and I didn't have as much to do that I was interested in doing, I left Compass. Um, After trying out, I tried out retirement for a little bit. It didn't really work. I did some consulting. I bought an MSP with a partner in Washington, D.C., a small MSP. And once I announced that I'd left Compass, all of a sudden I started getting calls from private equity firms that were looking for a guide to bring them into this industry, which of course they were really excited about. Recurring revenue, IT services, let's go, right? They loved it. Um, and so in 2023, I partnered with Axel Reed Capital out of New York, and we founded Canyon Point Technologies. Since then, we've been doing transactions. We have 5 companies in the family, and we're on our way to we think 150 million in revenue in the
Oh,
next 3 years.
tremendous.
So we're off and running. It's very exciting.
So, it's a great story of kind of even when we talk about accidental entrepreneurship, it's almost like you became an accidental M&A advisor
Oh,
just
for
by
sure.
going through the process yourself. But I think that's a great example. Until you do it, you really don't know what to expect. And what got our conversation started, Josh, was recently you'd put up a post about the realities of the MSP exit. And I'm going to
Yeah,
use the term the $2.5 million exit fallacy, which
right.
is a lot of MSPs think, hey, when I get to like 2.5 million, I'm in a pretty good spot. This is where it's going to be. And I think you brought light to the fact that maybe, but probably not.
Yeah, probably not. It's a look. If you've built your MSP to 2.5 million in revenue, and you have healthy EBITDA margins, let's say healthy is 15%, right? You're taking home 350 a year, in EBITDA, and probably you're paying yourself another 150, something like that. So it's a really good living. You've got a great job at that point.
Yeah.
But the reality is, you don't have a business that is, for most people, going to transact in a meaningful way, right? It's not going to be life changing. Um, and I think you touched on this earlier, but demographically in this industry, a lot of people that frankly look like us got into this industry in the 90s or early 2000s. And there's this huge bubble, right? The industry was born back then,
Yep.
and all those founders that started the first wave, even the second wave of MSPs, we're now sort of aging out a little bit. And one of the things that I think is going to be a particular challenge for smaller, less mature, probably MSPs that are in that $2.5 million revenue range is that not only have they not created a ton of enterprise value by way of EBITDA, but they're also going to be entering and selling in a very supply rich environment, right? By my estimation, we've got 5 to 10,000 MSPs that would fit in that uh, in that space in North America,
Yeah.
uh, most of which have to transact in one form or another in the next 10 years. It's that's a lot of supply for upstream MSPs buyers for these types of businesses. So yeah, 2.5 million is an accomplishment. It's not to be diminished, but if you want to exit at a meaningful number, particularly if you have a partner, right? Because everything's got to get cut in
Cut
half.
in
There,
half.
there are a lot of MSPs that have 3 partners, and I've seen some with 4 and 5. And those MSPs are in for a rude awakening when they think about what their life's going to look like post exit. So yeah, um, I think that's the situation now.
Now, there were some interesting numbers you just kind of put in there, right? With that, there might be 5 to 10,000 that are ready to transact in the next 10 years. But MSP listeners, I want you to think about where you sit today and also think about how many MSPs that you hear that are out there. You hear numbers from ConnectWise, 40,000 MSPs, you hear 100,000 MSPs globally, and yet it's only 5 to 10% that are even in the conversation about transacting in any meaningful way. So what are the steps that you need to take if you're in the majority that really are looking at, hey, how do I maximize that exit when the time comes?
So at Canyon Point, and this was also true when I was with Compass, and it's common for consolidators like Canyon Point. We're looking for MSPs that are in that $4 to $10 million range. We'll do deals that are bigger than that. We're
Yep.
closing one in 9 days, 8 days. That's quite a bit larger. Um, and we'll do some that are a little smaller than 4 million if they're in the right geography. They have a lot of maturity, and they bring some things to the table that we think we need. So the advice I would give folks that are 2.5 million is get to 4. That's, once you can consistently generate EBITDA that's in that 650 to 800 range, you now can transact, and you can transact in, at a higher multiple. You have created enterprise value that's what I would call significant for most people. We'll just run through the math a little bit on the 2.5, and then below 2.5 or below 2. Obviously, this just gets worse.
Yep.
In the case of a typical $2.5 million MSP, and I've looked at least 100 of those in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, looked at the financials at a deep level. Most of them are making real EBITDA close to 10%. Actually, if I were to put a number on it, I'd probably say 8%, but let's say it's 10%. That means you're creating $250,000 in EBITDA annually. And we're going to put a multiple on that number, and that's how valuation is really established. There's some movement on the edges, but that's really how buyers establish a value. So for a business like that, that's generating 250K in EBITDA, you're probably going to get 2 to 3 times. Maybe in an exceptional situation, you can get 4 times that. Well, even at 4 times, that's $1 million transaction. You're
Pre-tax.
going to pre-tax. Now that's 800. You're going to have an escrow. You're going to have expenses associated with closing the deal. The expense part will probably chew up another 50 to 75,000 if you control your lawyers. It's great. It's not nothing, but it's probably not enough if you haven't really led a disciplined financial life to that
Yep.
point. It's probably not going to be enough to change your retirement at all, or even to guarantee
That you
the
can.
standard of living that you have today.
Yeah.
Now let's look at a $4 million MSP that's doing 15%. So more mature operational business that produces better profit margins and more scale. 4 million doing 15% is help me with the math here. I think it's 600,000 in
Yeah.
EBITDA. I'm not
Yes,
a
you're right. You're
mathematician, but
spot
it's
on. 600,000.
and at 600,000 you can expect a valuation in that 5 to 6. So let's say it's 5. Right there, we've just gone from 1 million to 3. I mean, and what does it really take to go from the first scenario to the second? Maybe 20 new customers at the right price, maybe some operational improvement on your help desk, better execution for your VCIOs to uncover more of that non-recurring revenue. Those pro services dollars are real. For most MSPs, they go right to the bottom line. It's a big deal to run a good VCIO process that drives all that. The reality is there's not a lot that has to happen
Yeah.
to go from scenario 1 to scenario 2, but it's got to happen. If it
Well, Josh,
doesn't happen, you're not going to
you see
exit.
one of the biggest things that happens, because when you talk about those numbers, what I also feel tends to be the shift right there is at 2.5, you still have an owner that's too involved in the day-to-day. They're oftentimes still the lead, account manager for key accounts,
Yeah.
or still doing much of the sales at that stage. When you get to that $4 million stage, you usually see that the companies that get to that level have made that transition where the owner, yeah, they might have still one or two key counter relationships that they keep ownership
Sure.
at the top level, but now the engine's running. There's a sales team or person, there's a account management process or person, like those things that used to all fall into that one, leader, or he's out of the technical game if he was more technical hands-on.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's really, I think, an important part when you get to that end. That helps with that multiple too, because the business now stands alone. If the leader chooses to walk and not, depending on your transaction type, and take that second bite of the apple, it's not going to crumble the business, nor does he have the risk that that money that's in escrow is going to never be earned because the
Right.
numbers tank, right? At that stage.
So I normally see that kind of, uh, I see the MSP that you just described at around that $6 to $7 million range. I see a lot of $5 million and $4 million MSPs that are still powered, obviously powered every
Wow.
day
It's
by that
amazing.
owner. The owner injects all the energy every day. The owner does the sales. The owner is holding everything together, right? That has an impact on valuation. But if the owner is committed to staying in that role post transaction and will structure an agreement that sort of requires that the owner
Yep.
stays in that role and operates effectively, you can still get the higher range of the valuation. If the owner wants to leave, most buyers are going to leave that kind of business, the business where the owner is
Yep.
really central to the operation. Most buyers will just opt out at that point unless they have an asset, an office around the corner, and they have every reason to believe that they can successfully onboard the customers and the people into their existing business. But most buyers will just pass at that point.
So that's
Um,
that's an important
yeah,
statement right there too for, those of you listening that are thinking about the exit. You may want to be thinking about that there is a period of time you're going to have to stay on, and
a
that this
hundred
isn't a
percent.
true exit. And what are you seeing kind of the average be on that, Josh? Because I could see the reason why, right? It's really owner comes with, helps drive the transition to the bigger team, and then ultimately the bigger engine can then phase them out as they would have, when they get to the 5, 6 million, 7 million that you're talking about as well.
Yeah, so that's a great point. I mean, I think that if you have an MSP that you're running, you are the active CEO of, uh, you you have to plan on 1 to 2 years following your transaction. You have to plan on remaining in that role, and you'll make a good salary, and you'll probably have equity in the larger company, and so you'll have a lot of reasons to do well and excel. But it's a different dynamic in a lot of cases. It certainly can feel different. The um, yeah, if you want to sell your boat in 2028, you got to sell today. You've got to
Yeah.
build on that extra time, or you're going to not have many options at exit, and you won't sell for as much.
No,
So
and I
two
think that's
choices.
I think that's an important reality, right? We
Yeah.
know that these deals, they can happen quickly, but quickly is a relative term, right? From start to finish, probably from discovery to deal. I know, at least in my experience, you'd be talking on the low end 6 months. So if
Yeah,
you're
it can
thinking
take
about
that
it,
long. Yeah.
yeah, if you're thinking about an exit, 6 months plus 2 years, you're spot on. That's 3 years from today to get out on that boat in 2028. And I think that's an important thing for many MSPs to remember too, is that that day is not the end, and it will continue on for a while. Even if you're not going directly, usually I see deals that will have some sort of hold back based on retention, and there's still
Yeah,
a keen interest that you have to have in that as well. Even if it's
100%.
consultative, you got to be able to answer the bell, right?
That absolutely. So it's all for the buyer. Once you've decided you want to buy an MSP, everything after that is risk management, right? Deal structure is all about risk management. Incentives are all about risk management. Retaining the seller is really important. Most MSPs, 80, 90% of their customers are customers that came to work with that owner
Yep.
and his or her team, but the owner is really important in the relationship. And I've seen examples in my career where the owner left post transaction, and the customers weren't that far behind, and the people weren't that far behind, right? I mean, um, yeah, it's one of the hardest things we have to manage is that cultural transition for all the stakeholders.
I had an experience where we had bought a MSP that the owner had chosen to leave, and he was willing to take 2 times less on his EBITDA just to be out. It was just a burnout moment,
Yeah,
if you will.
yeah.
And we had to really ramp up our transition team to make sure that we secured that asset and didn't have those people run. And there's a cost to that for the buyer as well when
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens. I mean, personally, I led that transition team and I had to go out and meet every customer within 3 weeks of sale just so they knew they weren't going to be left alone, lay out what the vision was, lay out what the philosophy was, and give them my cell phone in the process, right? To make
Oh, yeah.
sure they knew they had direct line to an executive leader because that was their biggest worry at that stage.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
Now, let's maybe transition as we wrap things up today into so I am that MSP at 2.5 million. I've just learned today what my targets really are for me to get there. What are some of the steps I can take as an organization to help me get there? We talked earlier about stepping out of your comfort zone, and this is one of the biggest challenges because many of us, we may have been running our MSP for 10 years and we've had nice growth, but not accelerated growth, and now we need to get there. How do we, make that metamorphosis?
Yeah, I would say that there are a few things that I recommend. Number one, find yourself a good peer group, right? And I
Hear
mean
that
a good
all the
one.
time.
Um, a competitive peer group with peers that are better than you, better as a leader, running a better business. Um, there are peer groups out there that are highly accountable and will push you. And then there are plenty of peer groups, unfortunately, these days that it's more of a social club. So find a
Yeah,
good peer group. If you can't find a good peer group, find a consultant, find a mentor, find someone who will take an interest, maybe even a equity interest in your business, and will drive you to exist outside of your comfort zone, right? Because that is exactly what has to happen. The second thing I would say is make sure that your personal financial situation is optimized, right? So make sure you're living below your means, that you're saving a tremendous amount of your income. Um, Clean up your financial life because this is part of that transition to no longer being paid, right? It starts now. It might take 3, 4 years before you get there, but there is a transition period. You'll be living off of your savings. Hopefully, this transaction is going to add materially to that. But yeah, um, number three, lean into sales. Ask your customers for referrals. Tell your customers, tell the community, tell your network how excited you are about the MSP that you've created, recent improvements, new process, and how that your business is ready to grow. Ask for help getting new customers. Ask everyone for help. Um, you'd be surprised. I'm speaking to the generic MSP owner out there, but a lot of people like you and want to see you succeed. Your customers want you to get bigger because they want you to gain new capabilities and strengths that will help them. Ask for referrals. And then I guess the third thing is make sure that I'll say operationally in general, but specifically that your financial management of the business is where it needs to be, right? That your financials are well maintained, that you're using a chart of accounts that's going to be helpful at exit and not harmful at exit. Um, and make sure that you're digging into your financial results, digging into the numbers, and your operational results, right? Make sure you've got the right KPIs in place. And not only are you tracking them, but you're talking about the KPI results with your team and moving toward better every month. right? That is obviously good for any MSP to pursue that. But when you're transitioning from, we did this earlier, right? We talked about the difference between an MSP that's doing 10% operating margin or EBITDA versus 15%. It's a massive change at deal time, when you go to market. Start doing the things that you know you need to do, right? If you need to get your help desk from 6 tickets per tech per day to 11, get them there. Push, help them figure out how to do that, right? If you're
Maximize
not running
output.
enough, yeah, if you're not running enough meaningful QBRs with your customers, fix that, right? If you have a pro services engineer or two and they're, and this is not a uncommon thing, they're running at 40, 45% utilization, uh, fix that. And the fix for that is usually you either need to drive a lot more professional services business or you
Or
have to
exit.
let one of those people go. And yeah, do that stuff.
Yeah.
Don't let someone like me buy your business and then do it 180
Well,
days
let's
later.
face it, most buyers are looking for those types of businesses
Oh
because
yeah,
they know they can buy you on a bargain and they're gonna
yeah,
optimize you tomorrow, and it's double win for them, right? They're gonna reap the
yeah.
benefits
That's
that
a
you
good way
could
to
have
put it.
attained. Yep.
That's a good way to put it, Brian. Don't be a bargain.
Yeah.
Don't be a
And and
bargain.
and start thinking about it now. Don't think about it at the last minute. That's the biggest thing I think I've heard from every M&A advisor is if you know there's going to be an exit that you're planning, start working backwards. Start thinking about the day that you're going to exit and what are the steps you need to take today. And in most cases, all of us need about a 2-year runway to really optimize and get to that point because you got to show it on the books too. And that requires a couple tax years usually.
So I'll throw this out there. I've always done this. I'll continue to do it. Sometimes I regret it because it cuts into my time. But any MSP owner that's out there that is thinking about transacting, sees it as something that's in their future and feels a little uncertain about whether they're ready, um, reach out to me. I'm happy to spend an hour. I'll tell you what I think. I'll give you specific advice based on what you tell me, and you know, I'll push you a little bit. I'm an MSP guy myself. I built an MSP. I know how hard it is. I know how much blood, sweat, and tears that we put into these businesses, and I want every MSP owner to get a good exit.
And listeners, if you're watching this on YouTube, we just posted up Josh's LinkedIn. Reach out to him, DM him, get that conversation started. If you're listening on the podcast, as always, we'll have Josh's LinkedIn down in the show notes. So, click on that link, connect with him directly. In addition to his LinkedIn, go visit out canyonpoint.com and go see a little bit about his services. And I'm sure, Josh, there's capture items on there where they can reach out to you as well
Yeah.
and
I
get.
mean, LinkedIn's probably the best. And I mean, right now there's probably 60 MSPs that call me every few months and ask me to sort of help them out. That's fine. I'm happy to help people. This industry's been really good to me. So
Yep, and I'll say this out loud, MSP, if you're sheepish about reaching out to a person like Josh, don't be. They're looking for those conversations early too. They can give you the guidance, but we're all in this for the marathon. And you may not be today, but you definitely are part of tomorrow. And the earlier you start engaging with these folks and at least getting a framework of what you need to do, hopefully what we shared today, and I really believe what Josh shared today should help you all immensely, is just start thinking about it and get it going and get out of your comfort zone and start doing.
great summary. Perfect.
Josh, any closing thoughts you want to share before we wrap up for today?
I guess the only thing that comes to mind is you know, be super intentional about this next part of owning an MSP. Um, don't wait for it to come to you because number one, it probably won't ever come to you, and when it does, you won't be ready. Be intentional about preparing for it now.
Awesome. Well, those are great words to close on today. Again, listeners, if you want to listen to this podcast, if you've seen them in the past, we have them up on YouTube at our MSP Business School channel. You can also catch them anywhere you get your podcast. Josh, I want to really thank you for joining us today. These topics are always fun ones because it's something that every MSP is concerned about. They just don't know what, they're all in a different point in their journey. And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise today openly, with the group and giving them some food for thought. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk
Happy to do
again.
it. Yeah, thanks, Brian.
You bet.